I always thought my father was the most ordinary man alive. Same job. Same routine. Same quiet life. Every day. Then one afternoon, a man with 4 stars on his shoulders walked into our living room, looked at the old photograph on our wall, and said very quietly, "You call him Dad?" Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The most ordinary man I knew. Until that afternoon, I believed I knew everything about my father. His name is Daniel Shaw. He is 61 years old. He has driven a school bus in our small town for 23 years. Same yellow bus, same morning route, same parking spot behind the depot on Mill Road. Every weekday, he woke up at 5:45. He made coffee in the same old blue machine that sat on the left side of the kitchen counter. He drank it standing up, looking out the window at the backyard. He ate 2 pieces of toast with butter. He put on his brown jacket and his blue cap, the one with the small American flag stitched above the brim, and he walked out the front door at 6:15. Before he got into the bus, he always did the same thing. He walked around the bus once, checking the tires, checking the mirrors, checking the door. Then he climbed in, started the engine, and tapped the horn twice before pulling away. 2 short taps. Every single morning. That was his way of saying goodbye. I used to watch him from the front window when I was a little kid. I would stand there with my juice box and watch him do his walk around, tap the horn, and disappear down the road. Every morning. Like clockwork. People in our town loved my dad. Not in a loud way. In a quiet, solid way. The kind of love that builds up slowly over years when someone is just consistently good. Mothers trusted him with their children. Kids trusted him with their secrets. You would hear things at the grocery store like, "Daniel Shaw is the safest driver in the county," or, "That man has the patience of a saint." In 23 years, he had never received a single complaint. Not one. He was not a man who talked a lot. He did not brag about anything. He did not tell long stories at dinner or try to be the most interesting person in the room. He just showed up, did his job, helped people when they needed it, and came home every evening in time for dinner. On Memorial Day, when the town held its small parade down Main Street, my dad never marched with the other veterans. He stood on the sidewalk with the rest of us, hat off, hand over his heart. Watching quietly. That was all. He never explained that either. I asked him once when I was about 12 years old. He just said, "That parade is for them, not for me." I did not know what that meant. I let it go. There was only one thing about my father that I could never fully explain. The photograph. It hung in our living room, above the old oak cabinet. Black frame. Glass slightly dusty. The photo itself was at least 30 years old, maybe more. In it, my father looked maybe 28 or 29 years old. He was thinner than I had ever known him. His face was hard in a way I had never seen in real life. His eyes were serious, not angry, not sad, just very focused, the way a person looks when they are paying attention to something that matters. He was standing in desert sand. Flat brown land stretched behind him as far as you could see. He was wearing full military uniform. Green jacket, heavy boots, a helmet clipped to his belt. He was holding a rifle across his chest. 4 other men stood with him. All in uniform. All serious. Nobody was smiling. I asked about that photo so many times growing up that I lost count. "Dad, when was that taken?" "Long time ago." "Where were you?" "Is that a desert?" "Were you in a war?" "Nothing worth talking about." He always said it gently. Not angry. Not hiding something on purpose, it seemed. Just, done. Conversation over. After a while I stopped asking. I figured some people had parts of their lives they did not want to share. I respected that. I moved on. I forgot about it completely. Until the black car came up the driveway. It was an October afternoon. Cool and bright, the kind of day that smells like leaves and clean air. I was home for the weekend, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, reading something on my phone. Dad was still out on his afternoon route. I heard tires on gravel. I looked out the window and saw a long black car in the driveway. Clean and official looking. The kind of car you do not usually see in a small town like ours. 2 men got out. One was a driver who stayed near the car. The other was tall, gray-haired, and straight-backed, wearing a military dress uniform covered in medals. Even from the kitchen window I could see the gold stars on his shoulders. 4 of them. He walked up the front path like he had been here before. Or like he had thought about coming here so many times that his feet knew the way. He knocked on the door. 3 times. Firm and slow. I opened it. He looked at me for a moment without speaking. Sharp blue eyes. Late 60s, I guessed. The kind of face that had seen a great many things and had not forgotten any of them. "Good afternoon," he said. His voice was calm and careful. "Is this the home of Daniel Shaw?" "Yes, sir," I said. "That is my father. He is not home yet. Can I help you?" He looked at me for another second. Then he nodded once. "My name is General William Carr," he said. "I served with your father many years ago. May I come in?" Something about the way he asked made it feel like more than a polite question. I stepped aside. "Of course," I said. "Please come in." He walked into the house slowly. I led him toward the living room. And then everything changed. The moment General Carr stepped into the living room, he stopped walking. He had seen the photograph. He stood completely still. His hands, which had been clasped behind his back the whole time, came loose. One of them reached out and gripped the back of the nearest chair. Not hard. Just steadying himself. Like the ground had shifted slightly under his feet. He stared at the photo above the oak cabinet. He stared at it the way you stare at something that you cannot believe is real. Like a ghost you thought was only in your memory had just appeared in a room in front of you. His lips moved. He said something very quietly. I barely caught it. Good God. He stood there for what felt like a long time. Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe a minute. I did not speak. I did not move. I just watched him. Finally he turned to look at me. When he spoke, his voice was different from before. Quieter. Slower. "That man in the photograph," he said. He pointed at it. "You call him Dad?" "Yes, sir," I said. "That is my father. Daniel Shaw." The general looked back at the photo one more time. Then he looked at me. "Son," he said carefully. "According to every military record in Washington, that man should not be alive." The words landed in the room like something dropped from a great height. I did not know what to say. I stood there and looked at the photograph. My father in the desert, young and serious, holding a rifle. The same photo I had walked past my entire life. "What do you mean?" I finally asked. The general did not answer right away. He was still looking at the photo. "The official record," he said quietly, "lists Captain Daniel Shaw as killed in action. 22 years ago. I made coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. We sat at the kitchen table, the general and I, and he started talking. Outside, the October wind moved through the maple tree by the fence. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall. I held my coffee cup and listened. My father, General Carr told me, was not just a school bus driver. Before the bus, before this town, before the brown jacket and the blue cap and the 2 horn taps every morning, my father was a captain in the United States Army. Special Forces. A man with a record of service that most soldiers never come close to. He was trained for the hardest kind of work. Small units. Deep missions. The kind that do not make the news. The kind where you go in quietly, do what needs to be done, and come back, if you come back. Your father had a quality that is genuinely rare, the general said. He held his coffee cup but did not drink from it. He could walk into a situation where everyone around him was afraid and somehow make the right decision anyway. Not a reckless decision. The right one. Calm. Clear. Correct. He paused. I have known a lot of soldiers in my life. Your father was different. I looked down at the table. My father. The man who packed his lunch in the same brown bag every single day. The man who remembered every child's birthday on his route and kept a list of them in his shirt pocket. What happened? I asked. The general set down his coffee cup. There was a mission, he said. It was 2002. My father's unit was deployed to a region I will not name here, in a country that was in the middle of a very bad and very complicated war. General Carr was a colonel at the time, commanding a battalion that my father's small team was attached to. Reconnaissance work. Moving ahead of the larger forces. Finding routes, identifying threats, gathering information. Dangerous and quiet. In March of that year, intelligence came in about a group of American soldiers who had been cut off. A patrol of 12 men had been separated from their unit during an enemy counterattack. They were pinned down in a small building in a village several miles inside dangerous territory. No radio contact. No supply line. The enemy knew they were there. Command ran the numbers, General Carr said. His voice was flat and careful. The odds of a rescue operation succeeding were considered too low. The risk of sending more soldiers in and losing them too was considered too high. He paused. The decision was made to wait and hope for a window. A window, I repeated. A chance, he said. A moment when the enemy pressure might ease enough to extract them safely. And did that window come? No, he said. It did not. I felt the tightness in my chest that comes before bad news. Your father came to me, the general continued. He had been studying the maps. He had been watching the patrol patterns on the intelligence reports. He came to me with a plan. He said he believed he could get those men out. The general looked at his hands. I told him the risk was too high. I told him those were the orders and the orders existed for a reason. He stopped. What did he do? I asked, even though some part of me already knew. He went anyway, the general said simply. My father took 4 volunteers. Men who trusted him, who knew what they were walking into, and who chose to walk into it. They moved at night. No vehicles. On foot, through territory that command had marked as too dangerous. 30 miles of bad ground, bad air, bad everything. They reached the building where the 12 soldiers were pinned down just before 3 in the morning. What happened next, General Carr told me, took less than 90 minutes. My father got the 12 men organized and moving. He had mapped 3 possible exit routes on the way in. He had timed the enemy patrol rotation. He knew exactly how much time they had. They moved the 12 men out through the dark. 2 were injured and had to be helped along. 1 was barely conscious. My father's team carried them. They reached safety before dawn. All 12 men. Every single one of them alive. I sat back in my chair. I looked at the general. He nodded slowly, confirming what his words had already said. 12 soldiers, I said. 12, he said. I thought about my father walking home from the bus depot at 5:45 every afternoon. I thought about him mowing the lawn on Saturday mornings. I thought about him sitting in his recliner watching the evening news. And I thought about a younger version of that same man moving through enemy territory in the dark, carrying an injured soldier on his back, getting 12 people out alive. He saved them, I said. Yes, the general said. He did. Then his face changed. But that is not the end of the story, he said. When my father's team returned to their base with the 12 rescued soldiers, there should have been relief. There should have been gratitude. Instead, there was an investigation. My father had disobeyed a direct order. That was a fact that did not disappear just because the outcome had been good. In a military structure, the ability to give orders and have them followed is not a small thing. It is the thing that holds everything together. A soldier who decides for himself which orders to obey is, in some ways, a threat to that structure, no matter how right he turns out to be. There was another problem too. During the return, there had been a firefight. Brief and ugly. One of my father's 4 volunteers, a man named Corporal James Reyes, was hit. He survived, but he was badly injured. He would spend 8 months in a military hospital and never return to active duty. Reyes never blamed your father, the general said. Not for 1 second. He knew what he was signing up for. He made his own choice. The general paused. But the investigation did not see it that way. There was a senior officer involved. A man with a polished record and friends in important places. A man who had been part of the decision to not attempt a rescue. If my father's mission was declared a success, if it was officially recognized as the right call, then the decision to wait, the decision that this senior officer had helped make, looked very bad by comparison. You know what happened next, I said. It was not really a question. Your father was charged with insubordination, General Carr said. The investigation concluded that he had acted recklessly, put his men at unnecessary risk, and disobeyed clear orders. He looked at me steadily. The 12 men he rescued were quietly processed. The mission was reclassified. The record was changed. Changed to say what? Changed to say that Captain Daniel Shaw had been killed in action during an unauthorized operation. He let that sit for a moment. It was cleaner that way. No messy hearing. No complicated questions about whose decision was right and whose was wrong. Just a clean record and a name on a list. I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. But he was not dead, I said. No, the general said. He was not. He was given a choice. Sign the papers, accept a discharge, disappear quietly, or face a full military hearing that would almost certainly destroy what was left of his career anyway. The general's voice was very steady. He had a wife. She was pregnant. He made the only choice a man in that situation could reasonably make. He signed the papers. He came home. He got a job driving a school bus. And he never told anyone. I heard the bus before I saw it. That familiar sound, the diesel engine, the creak of the big tires on gravel, the hydraulic sigh of the door. The sounds I had been hearing my entire life. I looked out the window. The yellow school bus was rolling slowly into the depot across the street. Same as every afternoon. Same driver behind the wheel. Same brown jacket. General Carr stood up from the table. He straightened his uniform jacket. He looked toward the front door. After all these years, he said quietly. He said it to no one in particular. More to himself. We heard the bus door close. We heard footsteps on the path. The front door opened. My father stepped inside. He was carrying his lunch bag in one hand and his thermos in the other, the same as every day. He looked up. He saw me first. Then he saw the general. For the first and only time in my life, I watched my father go completely still. Not the comfortable stillness of a man at rest. The tight, controlled stillness of a man absorbing something unexpected and deciding how to handle it. The 2 men looked at each other across the hallway. 20+ years of history hanging silent between them. Finally my father spoke. His voice was quiet and careful. William, he said. Daniel, said the general. A pause. "You took your time finding me," my father said. The general's reply was barely above a whisper. "I know," he said. "I am sorry for that." My dad looked at him for another moment. Then he looked at me. Then he set his lunch bag down on the hall table with the same quiet care he used for everything. "I suppose," he said, "we had better sit down." We sat at the kitchen table, all three of us. I made more coffee. Nobody spoke for the first few minutes. My father had taken off his cap and placed it beside the lunch bag. He sat with his hands around his coffee cup, looking at the table. The October light came through the curtains and made long lines on the floor. I asked the question that had been burning in me since the general arrived. "Dad. Is it true? What he told me?" My father looked up at me. "What part did he tell you?" "All of it," I said. "The mission. The 12 soldiers. What they did to your record. All of it." He looked back at the table. He was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he said finally. "It is true. Why didn't you ever tell me?" He looked at me with tired eyes. Not sad. Just tired in the deep, old way of someone who has carried something heavy for a very long time. "Because it was over," he said. "I made my choice. I came home. I built a life. That was enough." "But they lied about you," I said. "They put your name on a list of the dead." "Yes. And the man responsible just kept his career." My father looked at the general. Something passed between them. A look I could not fully read. Then General Carr reached into the inside pocket of his uniform jacket. He removed a thick envelope. He set it on the table between them. "That is actually why I am here," he said. My father looked at the envelope but did not touch it. "What is in it?" I asked. "Proof," the general said. "The officer who led the cover-up kept poor records. Or believed no one would ever look closely enough." He pushed the envelope slightly toward my father. "A staff attorney found inconsistencies during a routine records review. Wrong dates. Altered signatures. A mission report that does not match the communications log from that night." He paused. "It is enough to reopen the case." The kitchen was very still. My father put one hand on the envelope. He did not pick it up. He just rested his hand on top of it. Like a man touching an old scar. "If I open this," he said slowly, "what happens?" "There would be a formal review," the general said. "Your record would be corrected. The truth would be on paper." "And the officer?" "He is 3 months from retirement," the general said. "He has 40 years of service and a spotless record." He looked at my father steadily. "A spotless record built on a lie." My father pushed the envelope back across the table. "I don't want it," he said. I felt anger rise in my chest. Fast and hot. "Dad. Sit down," he said gently. I sat. He looked at me. Not with the face of a man who was giving up. With the face of a man who had thought about this every day for 22 years and had come to an answer that cost him something to reach. "You are angry," he said. "Yes," I said. "I am very angry." "That is natural." He folded his hands on the table. "I was angry too. For a long time. When I first came home, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I was back there. I heard the sounds. I saw the faces." He paused. "I wanted someone to pay for what they did." "What changed?" I asked. He looked at me. "You were born," he said. I had no answer for that. "When I held you for the first time," he said, "I understood something. Anger is a very heavy thing to carry into a new life." He shook his head slowly. I chose to set it down. General Carr spoke carefully. "Daniel. This is not only about you. There are 12 men still alive because of what you did. They have families. Children. Some of them have grandchildren now. They do not even know the full truth of who saved them or what it cost him. My father listened. And there is one more thing, the general said. He reached into his jacket again. This time he removed a single folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table. One of the 12 men you rescued, he said, has been looking for you for 15 years. His name is Marcus Webb. He is a high school teacher in Georgia now. He has a wife and 3 children. The general's voice was steady. He told me that not a day has passed in 22 years when he has not thought about the men who came into that building and got him out. He said he needs you to know that his children exist because of what you did. My father looked at the piece of paper. He did not speak for a long time. Then he looked at me. And he said the thing that changed everything. Ask me the right question, he said. I looked at him. What is the right question? Whether the truth deserves to be told, he said. I thought about that. Does it? I asked. He picked up the envelope from the table. He held it in both hands for a moment. Then he opened it. The Military Review Board met 6 weeks later in a government building near Washington. No cameras. No reporters. A long table, several senior officers, and the weight of 22 years of silence. My father wore a borrowed suit. The only tie he owned was a dark blue one my mother had given him many years ago. She had passed away 3 years before all of this, and I think he wore that tie because it was the closest thing to having her in the room. When we walked in, several of the officers stood. Not because they had to. Because they knew who he was. The hearing lasted most of the day. Witnesses spoke. Documents were presented. The communications logs from the night of the mission were shown side by side with the altered report. A retired signals officer testified that the timestamps had been changed after the fact. General Carr spoke last. He spoke for 20 minutes without notes. He described my father as the best soldier he had ever served alongside. He said that the decision to rescue those 12 men had been the correct decision, made by the correct man, at the correct moment. He said that the cover-up that followed had been one of the worst injustices he had witnessed in 40 years of service. When he sat down, the room was very quiet. The senior officer at the head of the table cleared his throat. Captain Shaw, he said. My father looked up. Based on the evidence presented, this board finds that you did not disobey orders in any meaningful sense. You acted on available intelligence, made a sound tactical judgment, and successfully completed a rescue operation under extreme conditions. He paused. The official record that lists you as killed in action will be corrected immediately. My father nodded once. There is one more matter, the officer said. This board will be recommending you for the Silver Star. My father shook his head slowly. That is not necessary, sir. The officer almost smiled. I am afraid, Captain, that decision is no longer yours to make. The ceremony was 3 months later. A small hall on a nearby base. Folding chairs, soft lighting, a gathering of veterans, officers, and a few civilians. My father tried to skip it twice. Both times, General Carr called him on the phone and talked him out of it. When we arrived, I noticed immediately how people looked at him. Not with curiosity. With recognition. Some of them had served in the same theater, at the same time, in units nearby. Word had traveled, the way word always travels among people who have shared something hard. An older man walked straight up and shook my father's hand with both of his. I knew a man who was in that patrol, he said quietly. He talked about the rescue for years. Never knew the name of the man who led it. My father looked uncomfortable. I appreciate that, he said. At the front of the room, a colonel stepped to the podium. He told the full story. Not a cleaned-up version. The real one. The mission, the rescue, the cover-up, the 22 years of silence. He said my father's name clearly and without any hesitation. Then my father walked to the front. He moved the same way he always moved. Calm and unhurried. The same walk I had watched all my life. The colonel pinned the medal to his borrowed suit jacket. The room was silent. Then it was not. The applause was not loud. But it was long. And it was from people who understood what they were applauding. My father waited for the room to go quiet. Then he spoke. "I want to say something," he said. His voice was steady and clear. 22 years ago, 5 men walked into a bad situation because they believed it was the right thing to do. One of those men, Corporal James Reyes, was badly hurt and never went back to service. He paused. I think about James Reyes every single day. If this medal belongs to anyone, it belongs to him. Nobody spoke. I also want to say this, he continued. For the past 23 years, I have driven a school bus in a small town. Every morning, children get on that bus and trust me to get them where they are going safely. He looked out at the room. That job has been one of the most important things I have ever done. I want people to know that. The size of a job is not measured by how many people are watching. He stepped back from the podium. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then the applause came back, stronger than before. After the ceremony, a man came forward from the back of the room. He was in his late 40s. Medium height, gray starting at his temples, wearing a dark jacket and a nervous expression. He walked toward my father slowly, like a man who had rehearsed this moment many times and was now not sure any of the rehearsals had been enough. My father saw him coming and went still. The man stopped in front of him. My name is Marcus Webb, he said. His voice was not quite steady. I was the corporal in the back left corner of that building. I had been there for 4 days. I had stopped believing anyone was coming. My father said nothing. He just listened. You came through that door, Marcus Webb said, and you looked at me and you said, "We're going home." Just like that. Like it was already true. His voice broke slightly on the last word. He paused. Steadied himself. I have a wife. I have 3 children. I have a good life. He looked my father in the eye. None of it exists without that night. My father put out his hand. Marcus Webb took it. They stood like that for a moment. 2 men connected by one night 22 years ago, meeting each other properly for the first time. You would have found a way out on your own, my father said. Marcus Webb shook his head. No, sir. We wouldn't have. He paused. But thank you for saying so. We drove home that evening. The same roads we had always driven. The same town. The same houses with their front porch lights on. Dad had the medal in his jacket pocket. He had not put it on after the ceremony. He just folded it carefully into his pocket like a keepsake, not a trophy. When we got home, he walked into the living room and stood in front of the photograph. The small black framed photo above the oak cabinet. The desert, the 5 men, young Daniel Shaw with the serious eyes. He looked at it for a long time. Then he took the medal out of his pocket and placed it on the shelf just below the frame. Not in the center. Off to one side. Like it belonged there, but was not trying to be the main thing. You okay? I asked. Yes, he said. I think so. We sat on the porch for a while after that. The night was cool and clear and very quiet. Dad, I said. I have been thinking about something. What? That night. When you went back in for those 12 men. I looked at him. Were you scared? He thought about that for a moment. Yes, he said. But you went anyway. Yes. Why? He was quiet for a while. The kind of quiet that is not empty. The kind that has something building in it. Because being scared is not the same as being wrong, he said. I was scared and I was also sure. Both things were true at the same time. And when you are sure, you move. I sat with that. Do you ever regret it? I asked. What it cost you? He looked out at the dark street. The empty road. The neighbor's porch light across the way. No, he said. Then he smiled. Small and real. Ask me about the other 23 years though. The bus, the kids, the same lunch bag every single day. He turned to look at me. Not 1 second of regret about any of it either. At 5:45 the next morning, my father woke up. He made coffee in the same old blue machine on the left side of the kitchen counter. He drank it standing at the window, looking at the backyard. He ate 2 pieces of toast with butter. He put on his brown jacket and his blue cap, the one with the small American flag above the brim. He picked up his thermos and his lunch bag. He walked out the front door at 6:15. I stood at the window and watched him. The same window I had watched from as a child with my juice box. He walked around the bus once, checking the tires, checking the mirrors. He climbed in. Started the engine. 2 short taps on the horn. And he pulled away. I stood there after the bus had gone and I looked at the empty driveway and I thought about everything I now knew. The missions. The desert. The 12 men. The 22 years. The hearing. The medal sitting on the shelf in the living room. And then I thought about the 2 horn taps. He had been doing that every single morning for 23 years. Every morning without fail. His quiet way of saying goodbye. His way of being present. His way of showing up. I used to think that was ordinary. Now I know that showing up, every day, without complaint, without recognition, without anyone knowing the full weight of what you carry, is one of the least ordinary things a person can do. My dad still drives the bus. He still wakes up at 5:45. Still drinks his coffee at the window. Still taps the horn twice before pulling out of the depot. Still comes home at 5:45 in the afternoon. Nothing about his daily life has changed. But I walk through our house differently now. When I pass the photograph in the living room, the desert, the 5 men, my father young and serious, I do not see a mystery anymore. I see a man who was scared and sure at the same time. Who chose to move when it mattered. Who paid a real price and never asked for anything in return. Who built a quiet, good life and put everything he had into it every single day. I see my dad. And every time I think about the night a 4-star general stood in our living room and stared at that photograph and asked in a voice that was barely steady, "You call him Dad?" I feel something I do not have a perfect word for. It is bigger than pride. It is more complicated than surprise. It is the feeling of understanding, for the first time, who someone really is. My father is not ordinary. He never was. He was just quiet about it. And if this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that the people you love might be carrying things you do not yet know about, then please pass it on. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that ordinary-looking lives are sometimes the most extraordinary ones of all. And maybe, tonight, look at the photographs on your own walls. And ask.